Hi, 8th graders. We're going to be reading Chapter 7, Sections 7 and 8 today, and you'll be completing the Chapter 7 reading notes Part 3 after you read the sections. So please open up to TCI and go to Lesson or Chapter 7, the American Revolution, and then go to Section 7, the War Moves South. After failing to conquer any state in the North, the British changed strategies yet again. Their new plan was to move the war to the south. There they believed thousands of loyalists were just waiting to join the king's cause. Clinton, that is General Clinton, began his southern campaign with a successful attack on Savannah, Georgia. From Georgia, he moved north to take control of North and South Carolina. At that point, Clinton returned to New York City, leaving Lord Charles Cornwallis to control the war in the South. Saving the South. Cornwallis soon learned that he did not really control the Carolinas after all. Guerrillas, that is, soldiers who are not part of a regular army, kept the American cause alive. One of them was Francis Marion, who was also known as the Swamp Fox. Marion's band of rebels harassed the British with hit-and-run raids. They attacked and then faded into the swamps and forests like foxes. Late in 1780, Washington sent General Nathanael Greene to slow the British advance through the South. Greene's army was too small to meet Cornwallis in a major battle. Instead, Greene led Cornwallis's troops on an exhausting chase through the southern backcountry. He wrote of his strategy, "We fight, get beat, rise, and fight again." Greene's strategy worked wonderfully. In April 1781, Cornwallis wrote that he was, quote, quite tired of marching about the country. He moved his army to Yorktown, a sleepy tobacco port on Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, for a good rest. A trap at Yorktown. By the time Cornwallis was settling into Yorktown, France had sent nearly 5,000 troops to join Washington's army in New York. In August, Washington learned that another 3,000 troops were scheduled to arrive soon in 29 French warships. Washington used this information to set a trap for Cornwallis. Secretly, he moved his army south to Virginia. When they arrived, they joined the French and surrounded Yorktown on land with more than 16,000 troops. Meanwhile, the French warships showed up just in time to seal off the entrance to Chesapeake Bay. Their appearance was crucial to the American victory. Now Cornwallis was cut off from the British Navy and from any hope of rescue by sea. The trap was sprung on October 6, 1781. Joseph Martin watched as a flag was raised to signal that American and French gunners should open fire on Yorktown. "I confess I felt a secret pride swell in my heart," he wrote, "when I saw the Star-Spangled Banner waving majestically." The shelling went on for days, until most of the guns in the enemy's works were silenced. Cornwallis surrenders. At first, Cornwallis clung to the hope that the British Navy would come to his rescue, even as Yorktown was exploding around him. When no ships arrived, he finally agreed to surrender. On October 19, 1781, American and French troops formed two long lines that stretched for more than a mile along the road to Yorktown. The French on one side and the Americans on the other. The two lines could not have looked more different. The French were dressed in elegant uniforms that gleamed with gold and silver braid in the afternoon sun. The Americans' uniforms, and not everyone even had uniforms, were patched and faded. Behind the lines stood civilians who had traveled for miles to witness the surrender. After hours of waiting, the crowd watched as 8,000 British troops left Yorktown to lay down their arms. The defeated troops moved with slow and solemn step. They were accompanied by a slow tune known as "The World Turned Upside Down." This same sad tune had been played at Saratoga after the British surrender. Cornwallis did not take part in this ceremony, saying that he was ill. In reality, the British commander could not bear to surrender publicly to an army that he looked down on as a, quote, contemptible and undisciplined rabble. While Cornwallis sulked in his tent, his men surrendered their arms. Many of them wept bitter tears. To the watching Americans, there was nothing sad about that day. It was a noble sight to us, wrote Martin, and the more so as it seemed to promise a speedy conclusion to the contest. All right, pause the video and work on the reading notes for section 7. Let's move on to section 8. Section 8. The war ends. The conclusion of the war did not come as quickly as Martin had hoped. When Lord North, the British Prime Minister, heard about Cornwallis's defeat at Yorktown, he paced up and down the room repeating, "Oh God, it's all over!" When the British people heard about the defeat, most of them accepted it. The loss at Yorktown drained any remaining support for the war. Still, months dragged on before King George was finally forced to accept that the British had been defeated. For most Americans, the end of the war was a time for joy and celebration. They had gained the freedom to govern themselves and create their own future. But liberty came at a high price. At least 6,200 Americans had been killed in combat. An estimated 10,000 died in camp of diseases, and another 8,500 died while in captivity as British prisoners. As a proportion of the total population, more Americans died fighting in the American Revolution than in any other conflict except the Civil War, in which Americans fought one another. The Treaty of Paris. Early in 1783, representatives of the United States and Great Britain signed a peace treaty in Paris. The Treaty of Paris had three important parts. First, Great Britain agreed to recognize the United States as an independent nation. Second, Great Britain gave up its claims to all lands between the Atlantic coast and the Mississippi River, from the border of Canada south to Florida. Third, the United States agreed to return all rights and property taken from Loyalists during the war. Many Loyalists did not trust the treaty's promise of fair treatment, and for good reason. During the war, Loyalists had been treated badly by Patriots. More than 80,000 Loyalists, both black and white, left the United States to settle in British Canada. The impact of the American Revolution. The American Revolution had a major impact in other parts of the world. In Europe, it thrilled liberals who dreamed of creating their own democracies. The American example was especially influential in France, which soon had its own revolution. As one Frenchman wrote, "They are the hope of the human race. They may well become its model." Indeed, in the 1800s, that model would help inspire revolts against European rule in South America. All right, that's it for this chapter. Please work on finishing the reading notes for part 3 of chapter 7. Thanks for watching.